Charlotte and I have 8 children, and Keith is the 5th of 6 brothers.
Keith grew up playing any type of sports that was available to him.
If there was a game going on, Keith was going to be in it. And it didn't make much difference what it was. Keith was going to play, and Keith did well in just about everything he tried. Keith was always fun to watch in sports, and no matter what it was, Keith was going to try his very hardest, and he was going to succeed one way or another.
Keith and I were 2 of the biggest sports fanatics in my class. I remember going over there after middle school practices, after soccer and basketball, and we'd shoot hoops or kick the ball around, and that was one of the things that we enjoyed best. That was why we were such good friends.
Keith started playing piano when he was in elementary, moved from there to guitar, picked up the violin. He could play the mandolin, he could play the harmonica. It really didn't matter. He would pick up an instrument, and in no time he was playing it.
Keith was always just as active as any other child his age. He was involved in scouts and all the school activities.
While he was working on a medical merit badge for Boy Scouts, something came to our attention. He was working with a good friend of ours who was a medical student.
He invited me over to go through the checklist of things that he had to do to learn about medicine to get this merit badge. And one of the essential components of this merit badge was to either shadow a physician in their regular course of practice, or learn how to do a history, how to take a medical history, and how to do a physical examination. Then I decided, you know what? I think I'll use Keith as a guinea pig and show him how to do a physical exam on him. And everything on his exam was normal until I started feeling his belly.
Steve told us that he found something unusual in the abdominal exam that he did on Keith, and highly recommended that we take Keith to the doctor to get this checked out.
When I found out, I believe we were in biology, and they called the entire high school out into the library, which was about 60 students at Hallelujah.
Dr. Lamberts walked in the door. Keith was sitting on the examining table, and I was sitting on my chair. And he said, "I really hate to tell you this, but Keith has leukemia."
The immediate reaction was just total silence. The main thing I remember about that was just how quiet everybody was, how quiet everything was. And then within a couple seconds, people started crying.
And I talked to John and I said, "John, we're coming home and Keith has leukemia and we need to go to MCG right now."
This leukemia behaves differently in that it often presents with no symptoms. Some people present with mild fatigue, some people just have big spleens on a routine screening exam. A normal white blood cell count is 4,000 to 11,000 per microliter. Keith's white blood cell count was about 350,000 per microliter.
So at that point, in the immediate hospital stay, while the doctors figured out what exactly was going on, what their treatment plan was going to be, our family really had a cloud of uncertainty and fear that really gripped us all.
Keith's initial treatment was not as successful as the doctors had hoped, and then it was determined that he needed a bone marrow transplant. What they told us was, in essence, that we're going to try to cure this cancer by giving your child a lethal dose of poison. But we will try to keep him alive for this treatment to work. Not a very reassuring thing to tell a parent.
I got to spend a couple weeks with Keith in the hospital and experience with him the change from relatively being healthy and then getting extremely sick, his hair falling out. I got to shave his head with him, all the sores in his mouth, on his back, having to dress his wounds at night.
Watching Keith go through the transplant process was really difficult. He was given high levels of poison to kill the cancer, But in the process, it looked like my little boy was being killed. He might have been 6'2", but he was still my little boy.
I went up there one time with Lauren Brown to see Keith, and it was very, very tough seeing him. And Keith was completely bald. He was very weak looking. He could barely walk, let alone do any of the activities that I was used to seeing him do.
One of the hardest moments was watching my two youngest siblings come up to see Keith. And when you say, I'm going to go see Keith, you think you're going to actually sit down and be able to talk to him and give him a hug. But they had to stop at a glass. They were too young, they couldn't get him sick, and it was just absolutely heartbreaking to see them just not being able to actually see their brother.
After the actual bone marrow transplant, there was a long way to recovery. For many weeks, Keith couldn't be around other people. His immune system was destroyed and had to rebuild itself. And that process took several weeks.
And then came our visit at Emory, and Keith asked, "Can I go back to school?" And his doctor said, "Well, I guess."
Keith's cancer treatment took him out of my life essentially for an entire year. So when he came back and played basketball with me on a varsity level, it meant the world.
Keith's determination to play and do well at sports was something that couldn't be held down by what he had.
The senior year came, and you look back on it, and it was just one of the most special basketball years that I've ever coached, for sure. And also looking around, it's just got so many storylines to it. But Keith is really one of the biggest storylines in our sports history at Alleluia. But I have to be honest with you, I just did not see Keith coming that year. Immediately at the beginning of the season, there was something very special and a little change about his shot. You couldn't miss it. I think if I remember right, he made 4 threes his first game, but after that, it was like 6 and then 7 and then 8 in the next couple games.
We were winning games that no one picked us to win in, and we were making far more threes than any of the teams that we played, and most of this was due to Keith's three-point shot. One of the prize accomplishments of the Alleluia Community School was breaking the three-point record. In the last game of his season, Keith broke the record by making 19 threes in one game.
Keith was so dialed in that the rim must have looked as big as a kiddie pool. I mean, this guy was swishing shots all over. I couldn't even believe some of the things he was doing to hit these shots.
Keith's basketball career was amazing to watch. It was exciting to watch him play, but it was more than exciting. It was so full of joy because he was alive. We didn't know if he was going to live. Now he was not only living, he was making it wonderfully fun to be there with him.
What a leader, that really developed, and what an incredible story of a guy who I thought probably wasn't going to get to play high school basketball again. When I first found out he was going to be able to play, I was surprised, thinking that he'd be frail and that they wouldn't let us touch him. And they didn't give us too much admonition. But really enjoyed the time we had with him. And I don't think you'd find anybody who got to see him play who wouldn't think it was just one of the highlights of all the basketball they've ever watched. So it was great stuff.
By the time I was diagnosed, I was enveloped in a constant fear whether I was going to make it out. I didn't know if I was going to get the life back that I once had. I didn't know if I was ever going to be able to play sports again. life was completely changed. There was a lot of hardship, but there was also a lot of good that came out of it. The Make-A-Wish Foundation, they offered me a gift, and so I thought about it, and I wanted something to kind of help me look forward to getting through transplant, because there was a chance that I might not make it. I already played piano, so I asked for a baby grand piano, and here it is. The journey through cancer was definitely difficult, but afterwards I was able to get back to doing the things I loved, and even to this day I still play instruments. I play at the coffee houses and at talent shows, so I've been able to get back to doing the things I loved. Throughout my battle with cancer, I've faced many hardships, but I've also had many incredible experiences as a result of it. Looking back on it now, I thank God for it all, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.